the innovator of dynamite, Alfred Nobel.
I was born in Stockholm, actually, in 1833, in a quite poor home. My father was an inventor and had a company that had bankrupt, and he had debts in Stockholm. He got a contact in the Russian army with a general with the name of Egarev, with all the ideas that he had. So when I was 4 years old, he went to St. Petersburg and started to develop these products for the Russian army. He succeeded so well, so he could send home money to us and even pay all the debts. Then when I was 9 years old, he came home and said, now we can move to St. Petersburg with the whole family. So it was me, my elderly brothers, Robert and Ludwig, and my mother and father who moved to St. Petersburg. My father was very careful with the education. But at that time, foreigners were not allowed to go in Russian schools just like that. So all the education we got was private teachers, or sometimes in groups with other foreigners. So you had to learn a lot of languages. Otherwise you were not able to talk to your friends. So when I was 17 years old, I was able to talk 5 languages: Swedish, Russian, English, German and French. I actually wanted to be a writer, but my father said, no, Alfred, I want you to be a chemist. And all the books from that day was about chemistry. And to learn all this practical chemistry, my father sent me out to these laboratories that were around the world, especially in Europe. And on one of these trips, I met a man with the name of Sobrero, an Italian scientist. He had found an oil that he called nitroglycerin. He couldn't see the potential in this oil, but I did. And when I came back to St. Petersburg, I developed it even more. And in the end, I could go out on the market as Nobel blasting oil, nitroglycerin. And that was a huge success. We moved home to Sweden at that time and started the first nitroglycerin company in the world, in Vinterviken in Stockholm. But nitroglycerin is dangerous. You can't shake it too much, then it explodes. You can't store it in the wrong environment, then it can explode. And in the production there was a lot of accidents. And suddenly some countries start to forbid producing and even using nitroglycerin. So I knew that I had to find a safe solution. Well, we were a lot of scientists to try to find a safe explosive, but it was me, Alfred Nobel, who came with the first and the best solution. In 1867 I could come with a patent of dynamite. And that was a success, a huge success. The first year we produced dynamite, we produced 11 tons. 7 years later, we produced 3,120 tons. And all the companies that I started around the world, I was very careful to rule myself. Well, at least give them instructions what to do with my company. And there was a lot of traveling for all the board meetings. And if I didn't have time for that, I wrote letters to them. 25, 30 letters a day was not unusual at all for me to write. But all this traveling something made me tired, and I knew that I had to, well, settle down somewhere and take it easy. At least that was my intention. And Paris was the town that I first fell in love with. I bought a house at Avenue Malikov and I built the most technological advanced laboratory out in Sevran, and I continued my work. But the authorities in Paris starts to mess with me, and they even accused me of stealing patents from other scientists from France. So they made a house research in the laboratory in Sevran. And I had to go to court to prove that some of my ideas and some of my patents that I had applied for was mine. I thought that was too much, so I closed it down in Sevran, the laboratory, and moved it to Sanremo in Italy. I continue my work there, but even there the authorities start to decrease my possibilities of development. And in the end I thought I had to find a company that had my demands. And Sweden was the country that I looked at. I mean, I had my roots there, even though my father and my mother was dead. I knew that that's the place I had my roots. And there were 2 companies that were interesting for me, Finspång and Bofors in Karlskoga, or Bofors Guldspång as it was called at that time. And when I saw the potential of the workers there and the energy the whole area just blew off, and the potential of the company, I knew that that's the place that I should settle down. And I bought Bofors, Gullspång then, and the industry of Björkborn for 1 million crowns. And the manor house of Björkborn was a deal. It was a part of that deal. So I moved to Karlskoga, to Björkborn Manor House. And that's where I spent my last years. And that's the place where I start to work with my will. Well, to be honest with you, that's the place that I really, so to say, went to my heart. But the Swedish winters were not so. They were not good for my health. And I went to the doctor actually in Amsterdam, and he ordered me, of all people in the world, to eat nitroglycerin. Well, I wrote my will, and well, the 10th of December 1896, I died. It's funny to say I died, but I had to do that because that's the truth. And my relatives, they really was, as I say, expected a lot from my will, but you should have seen the faces when they opened it. Instead of all the money that they thought they will have, I wrote very clearly that most of the money they could count on me, Alfred Nobel, should be placed in a foundation where the interest should go to 5 different prizes: chemistry, physics, literature, medicine, and peace. I also wrote who would want to take care of these prizes. I wrote, for example, that the peace prize should be taken care of the Norwegian government. But the problem they had was, because when I died, I had 3 houses, so they had to decide where I was living, because they had to go to court somewhere and make the will legal, and they had to go to the right place. But there was a saying at that time that said, where the man have his horses, that's his home. And I had my 3 white Russian horses in the stable at Björkborn Manor House, Karlskoga, Sweden. So they decided that that was my home. They took all the papers there and they made it legal for the first time in the world, in the courthouse in Karlskoga. And Ragnar Solman is a very important man. He was my personal assistant the last year. He sat in the manor house of Björkborn and made the whole work and the structure around what he later called the Nobel Prize, exactly as I wanted it from my will. Yes, and 1901 was the first year where they had the award. And then I've been, so to say, sitting up in my heaven and been looking at the development of the Nobel Prize, and, well, you can only smile. Well, and what the future will bring, I don't know, but I can smile then too.